Good evening and welcome to the Bible study of the Church of Christ of Bridgeport. We are so glad to have you with us. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you as our guest. It is a pleasure to have you as brothers and sisters. And we've been having a great time in this book. What do you think about the Christ? We're on chapter 69, the boy with the unclean spirit. I think we're going to have a good dialogue tonight concerning that. And I hope that you pre-study this section so you can have some input. It is a very exciting story in the Bible, and it come right at the right time, honestly, of Jesus and his ministry. It's just one more thing that the master does and does well. And I think tonight you will see a more human side, the more son of man side, in his connection and coupling with the son of God side. And you can see how sometimes preachers get frustrated in the ministry. That will come out tonight as we study. So again, welcome and thank you so much for being a part of the Bible study this evening. Okay, turn your books to page 188, chapter 69, 188. We have three gospel accounts of this story: Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So we're going to need three separate readers. Tonight, I'm going to be using the NASB version, and I'll be mostly making my comments out of Mark tonight, just to give you a heads up on that. My Word Study Bible gives me more information on certain words here, and I have Greek word studies here also. So just for my own personal study of this particular section. Okay. All right. So can someone open us up and read Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21. Again, Matthew chapter 17, 14 through 21. And then can I have a reader for Mark 9, 14 through 29. And Luke 9, 37 through 43. Okay, again, let me repeat these chapters and verses. Okay, Matthew chapter 17, 14 through 21. So can I have a hand up for that one? Mark 9, 14 through 29. And the last one is Luke 9, 37 through 43. You're ready.
Okay, I think I'll read Matthew.
Okay, great.
Okay. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffering severely. For he often falls into the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, Why could we not cast it out? So Jesus said to them, Because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting.
Okay, Sister Erica, you would do Mark 9.
Sure. Mark 9, verses 14 through 29. This is the New King James Version. And when he came to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and scribes disputing with them. Immediately when they saw him, all the people were greatly amazed, and running to him, greeted him. And he asked the scribes, What are you discussing with them? Then one of the crowd answered and said, "Teacher, I brought my son who has a mute spirit. And wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not." He answered him and said, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me." Then they brought him to him. And when he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed him and he fell on the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So he asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And often he has thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you believe, all things are possible to him who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." When Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "Deaf and dumb spirit, I command you, come out of him and enter him no more." Then the spirit cried out, convulsed him greatly, and came out of him. And he became as one dead, so that many said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had come into the house, the disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" So he said to them, "This kind can come out by nothing but prayer and fasting."
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Brother Stanley, our final read.
Now it happened on the next day when they had come down from the mountain that a great multitude met him. Suddenly a man from the multitude cried out, saying, "Teacher, I implore you, look on my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him. He suddenly cries out, it convulses him, so that he foams at the mouth, and bruising him, it departs from him with great difficulty. So I implored your disciples to cast it out, but they could not." Then Jesus answered and said, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." And as he was still coming, the demon threw him down and convulsed him. Then Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the child, and gave him back to his father.
Thank you. Okay, let us dive right on in. This is a very popular story in biblical history, and it has been preached and studied more times than not, and it's a very exciting story. We are coming off the heels of the Transfiguration, another great moment in time, a very exciting time for Jesus. He gets his comfort right before the end of his ministry. Matthew, Mark, Matt, John, and can't get my mind right, was at the Transfiguration with him, and they wanted to do something special and these kinds of things, but they're coming down now. They're coming back down, and the ministry is heating up down at the bottom of the mountain, and the scribes are there, and there's a guy there that has his son there that needs some help, and this shouldn't be too hard for the disciples to do. We don't know, we weren't in the audience, but we're going to see now as we break this down what happened, and we get your version of what happened also. Okay, so let's jump into the question part of this so we can see what the thought process is. Jesus said everything is possible for him who believes, Mark 9:23. Did Jesus mean that any person can perform miracles of healing if he believes that he can? Or did he mean that he, Jesus, was especially willing to heal people who had faith in him? What do you think? Like I said, I'm in Mark 9 and I'm out of NSB version tonight. And I want to read verse 24 of Mark's version. It says, immediately the boy's father cried out and began saying, "I do believe. help me with my unbelief. Now, it's pretty dramatic in this part of the story because the father is involved now with some of the things that has been going on publicly before Jesus got there. So apparently, to the story, the way the story started, the father was looking to see Jesus. Jesus wasn't there. So the next best thing is those people that are with him that they have seen and have heard. Remember, Jesus sent them out, have heard some of the things that they do. So they just come to the source. Hey, look, I need some help. Can you help me? And it didn't happen. And the scribes were going off on Jesus' disciples. So Peter, James, and John, they escaped this, but they got a little bit going on themselves at the transfiguration. So they came down on a mountain and his disciples are being attacked. They were being tongue lashed. And they just want to know what's going on. Are you guys for real or are you fake? And the guy believes, bless his heart. I mean, he would have never brought his son there if he didn't believe something can happen. But when it didn't happen, it kind of like deflated his belief. So now he's at a point in his faith that he's simply asking what a parent would ask. Why is it not working? Why is the medicine not working? I mean, why is the antibodies not working on my child? You know, what's going on? I heard that you was the best pediatrician in the country. You know, why did this work on other children and it's not working on my child? So, you know, if you put yourself, and you've been there where you have asked these kinds of questions, and he's only being human and extremely human right now. And this is a violent incident that is ongoing in his family. So I just want to, like, you know how I am. I want to keep things very, very personal, where the emotional side of this and the stressful side of this is at its breaking point. So if you can finally find somebody who can do certain things, you know, it's like a faith healer. I mean, you get there, you want to be healed. You know, if you have to pay $40 or whatever they charge for you to do that, you want to walk away healed because you're tired. Okay. So, and this is somebody that's very, very, very tired at this particular time in his life. So he's just asking a simple question here. Why? I tried, it didn't happen. And the apostles don't look good right now. Okay. They don't look good right now. So if you ever been to a faith healer before and had somebody lay hands on you and nothing happened, this is that moment right here. Nothing happened. Okay. So I don't know if you ever done that before, but there's a whole lot of people that have chronic illnesses that have gone to people who claim to have had the power to heal, and they threw it right back on them by telling them that it was their faith. Okay. So kind of like think about that and think about where this guy is right now. Now, some of your studies have led you to exorcisms. And remember, that word itself doesn't carry the connotation that it carries today. Back then, you know, Mark's account describes how Jesus is surrounded by a crowd, one of whom asked help for his son who has a spirit that makes him unable to speak. He explains that the spirit makes him foam at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and become rigid. He tells Jesus that he asked his disciple to cure the boy, but they had been unable to do so. Jesus responds by describing the crowd and his followers as a faithless generation, and asks, how much longer must I be among you? Okay, now here we are with question number one. And I purposely didn't read the book account because I think the three Gospels account is action packed. So I just want to keep it right in the textbook instead of us looking in the book tonight, but looking in the book tonight for the questions. Okay. So again, you know, what do you think? Anybody have a comment? Jesus said everything is possible for him who believes. Well, a lot of people believe today. So what do you think? Did Jesus mean any person can perform miracles of healing? And if he believes that he can,
Can you hear me, Ellis?
go ahead.
No, he didn't mean that, because if that was possible, I wouldn't be wearing glasses right now, and I've been wearing glasses most of my life. I would have perfect vision. If I was able to perform that miracle on myself, I would have done it, years ago. So no, he didn't mean that at all.
Okay. All right. Brother Stanley?
So I also like Mark's account. No disrespect to Matthew and Luke, but there's so much more here. And I also noticed that the author is very rightly limiting this to 2 questions, because this is a very double-edged sword section, meaning at surface level, a lot of people may say, yeah, I understand what's going on, but there is a undertone that's extremely important. And like the word belief is much like the word love. Those 2 words, if I had to guess, I'd probably say top 10 undervalued words. I want to say top 3. And the reason being is because God is love. And if you believe, you're saved, right? So like, I feel like when people say believe in God, is not the same way definition that Jesus is saying you all don't believe, right? Like, and when we say I love ice cream, it's not the same way as God is love, because the disciples asked how come they couldn't do it. And he said to them, because they didn't believe, right? Their faith, but they did believe, right? They believed he's the Son of God. They believed enough to quit their lives. I don't even want to just say their jobs, quit their lives and follow him. They believed enough to go be sent out 2 by 2. Like, they do have some belief here. Even the guy has some belief, but that's not the belief that I believe Jesus is saying, right? Like, I think awareness and belief and dedication, I think, are 3 different things, right? The demons had awareness. And at this time, I would argue no one living, no one on earth could have the type of belief that we could have, because Jesus hadn't been fulfilled, right? So like their belief had to be limited because Jesus hadn't been glorified fully. So it's also hard to look at this out of time, because Jesus is talking to them in time, right? And in that time period, that generation, how long will I be with you, he said, right? And not long, right? We know this from the Bible story, but before I pounce on their unbelief, I have to realize, wait, Jesus hasn't risen from the dead yet. So that's why I say the miracles are nice, and I don't mean to minimize them at all, trust me. But Jesus raising from the dead is the miracle, and that has not happened yet. So there's still a lot of confusion. And I feel like the belief that he's talking about, if you believe me, you'll keep my commandments. Remember, he said that during the Lord's Supper in John. They already believe him. If it wasn't some higher belief, that sounds redundant, right? John goes in his 1 John talking about, if you love him, you'll keep his commandments. His audience could have been like, we're already Christians. Like, you're not talking to heathens. Like, we're already doing God's will, but are you doing it to the dedication level? And I think that that's the upper level Christianity that doesn't make it to Bible studies often, I feel. And I could be wrong, but one of the reasons why is for fear of sounding like denominationalisms or other religions, because other religions, especially Eastern and African religions, spend a lot of time on what they call transcending, where you're going to the next level. I don't hear that phrase too much with Christianity, but this is transcending, meaning this is not like You know the parable where Jesus was saying of the workers, you start at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, you get the same reward. This is the beginning of the day workers. You see what I'm saying? This is the people who dedicate their whole life in its totality is way different than me coming on Sunday and still getting to heaven. See what I'm saying? Like this is next level Christianity that everyone can't tap into, right? I'm trying to dance around what I'm saying, not to be offensive and be respectful for maybe visitors listening, because I'm not sure where people are coming from in terms of faith. But this is not, I can just be baptized on my deathbed and be called and receive the blessing. And there is a place for that, right? But this is not that part, is what I'm saying. This is a complete utter dedication to all of God and none of self. And at this time, no one on earth had that, not even the disciples, right? Because Jesus was not fulfilled. So how would they fully have this pure belief that we could tap into? Now, when I get to us, I mean, this question is here to what Sister Kathy was talking about. I agree. I have some ailments in my own self that I would heal. But I also have to admit, I don't have that belief. I don't have that faith. See, like when I see a mountain, I think that can't move. Already, I think it can't move. See, so I already defeat myself. You get what I'm saying? And again, I'm dancing because I don't want to lead people's mind astray, but this is talking about a next level that I don't think about that much and we don't discuss that much in public settings, because I feel the world has perverted this concept so much. Sometimes we're so guarded, we don't want to discuss this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I feel like it's another level that Jesus was alluding to that the average reader may miss in normal Bible study.
Today, this kind of behavior, thank you, Brother Stanley, this kind of behavior is associated with epilepsy. Is a central nervous system neurological disorder in which the brain activity becomes abnormal, causing seizures or periods of unusual behavior, sensations, and sometimes loss of awareness. Now, in Mark 9, the Father says, and Jesus comes up, him and his three disciples comes up, and he noticed that the scribes are arguing with them. So there is a lot going on right here. So it has turned into whatever didn't happen has turned into some back and forth. Okay, so you can only imagine what the disciples are saying and what the scribes are saying, and how the scribes are attacking the disciples because of what they could not do. They're being discredited. And then you got some people who believed, not only the man, who don't believe because nothing did happen. So what's going on, right? You have to throw those kind of things into the story based on verse 15. And immediately when the entire crowd saw him, they were amazed and began running up to greet him, meaning Jesus. So people see Jesus, they're going to see the solution to the problem. So all of a sudden, the vibe of the crowd turns happy and excited because Jesus is coming. Okay, the disciples couldn't do it, but Jesus is coming. We've never not seen Jesus do something like this. It's just not Jesus. Okay, so verse 16, and he asked them, what are you discussing with them? And one of the crowd answered him, Teacher, I brought you my son, possessed with a spirit which makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it dashes him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and stiffens out. And I told your disciples to cast it out, and they could not do it. Okay, so now the man is frustrated. He's telling Jesus about his frustration and why he's frustrated, and he's directing it to his disciples. He said, I came to see you. That's what the man just said. I brought my son to you. You were not here, but the next best thing was here, and they couldn't do it. So that's the man's defense. He's deflated now. Okay. He tells Jesus about the condition, and he answered them and said, oh, unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him to me. Jesus is addressing everybody now. He's not leaving no one undone about what's going on, the commotion and what people are saying. He asked a question, he got the answer. A man pops out of the crowd and says why he's there. Here he is the center of this commotion. This man and his boy is in the center of this commotion right now. And Jesus said, okay, because that's just the way it seems he said. He said it, okay? Then they brought the boy to him, and when he saw him, immediately the spirit threw him into a convulsion. Falling to the ground, he began rolling about and foaming at the mouth. Now, today's version and definition of that is a seizure. In Jesus' day, the spirit seen Jesus coming, so the spirit act out. It did, right there in front of Jesus. Now, the father says, because Jesus asked his father, how long has this been happening to him? I don't know if you ever seen a person having a seizure before. I really don't know how many of you guys are in our audience. And as Brother Stanley said, I'm being very sensitive to those of you who are in current situations like this with this kind of emotional, neurological behavior. It is not pleasant. It is not something that you can explain. It's very draining. It's very dangerous looking and everything. And when the person come out of the seizure, it's like they don't know where they are. It looks like somebody else took over them. And you're just looking at the whole thing unfold, and you just praying that they don't get hurt, that, nothing seriously happens to them, but it is not pleasant, right? So Jesus asked the question, the father gives him the answer, and the father becomes very descriptive. So we see why the father brought his son to Jesus. He's emotionally tired. He really is. Okay? And he asked the father how long, and the father said from childhood. So this has been going on a long time. And the father goes on to say more. It has often thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. So the father is saying, to me, this is not a normal behavior. This is another spiritual person or persons inside my boy, because it seems like it knows what it wants to do with my child. Isn't that what the father just said? The father gets very descriptive. It from time to time throws him in the fire, and then it throws him into the water to destroy him. Because from the father's perspective, it looked like there's something else going on. Okay, so now we're looking at a world, we're looking at a time period, we're looking at a ministry where Jesus did a lot of this kinds of healing, and the unclean spirits, the demonic world, was very, very, and I must say, when they seen Jesus coming, very bold on how they did things to people. When the spirit seen Jesus coming, he took the kid and he threw the kid on the ground. One version said, don't do this anymore. Jesus cast it out and said, don't do this and don't enter in him again. That's the power of God. Jesus had to be very descriptive himself when talking to this kind of power. And again, this is one of them subjects where a lot of us, we shy away from, and we try our very best to medically figure this out. To this day, we trying to find all kinds of medicines and stuff to handle seizures. And we have gotten much, much better than 20 years ago with seizures. But they still are very, very dangerous. And they happen to old, they happen to young. They happen to males, they happen to females. So this is very, very touching right here. Then immediately the boy's father cried out and began saying, I do believe, help me with my unbelief, because Jesus said, if you can, all things are possible to him who believes. You the master, I came, my belief got me here. You weren't here. So the next best thing to me was your disciples. But I came to see you because I know you are the source that I should come to with this kind of problem that I'm having? The man didn't say he had any other kind of problem. And my Lord, this is big enough. He said, but you are the source. You're the reason why I came here. And you were busy. You were gone. You were doing something else. And they couldn't do it. So think about that. Help me with my unbelief, because at this particular time, right now, I am faithless because nothing happened. So all the air is out of my balloon. And that's a parent. That's a parent. That's a desperate parent. And so many of you have been down this road. Some of you have gotten to your wit's end. That's what we call it, right? I'm at my wit's end. You know, when a person do like this here, they don't have nothing else that they can come up with. I'm at my wit's end. And I've been here. I've been at the lady with the flow of blood. I've paid all the money that I can pay. I have no more money. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I've seen physician after physician after physician. I'm done. If I can crawl and touch the bottom of this man's garment, I know I'm going to be healed. See, she was at her wit's end. And that's this father. And this is what he sees when this happens. When this occurs, this spirit takes over his son and tries to harm his son violently. And when he seen Jesus coming, he did the same thing. He did the same thing. Okay, brother and sister Fitzinger.
So Jesus' gospel is that belief in his name yields salvation. But that doesn't give you the ability to heal like this. Eventually, Peter in Acts could heal. He did some miraculous healing, but he was special. But so when Jesus said it takes prayer, what are you praying for? That somebody would be healed, but maybe you pray that they would believe and therefore be saved. But you don't have the ability to perform miraculous healing unless by knowledge, scientific knowledge and information, right?
Look at what's happening here. Jesus is having, again, you know, we have to slow it down because sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. Jesus is having a conversation with the spirit because he says something to the spirit to tell the spirit what not to do and to command the spirit to do something. So there is a world, a spiritual world that is going on right now where the Son of God is talking to the demonic world who is run and led by Satan. And that demonic world is responding to Jesus. Okay, so this is not a disease. Okay, this is activity that's going on right now. Now, no one else had the ability to do this because if they did, there weren't have been all these kinds of demonic spirits in people during this particular time period. Okay, now we go post cross and we see that the apostles had the ability to do this. Okay, and then we get stretched out away from that, you know, after the turn of the century. You don't see this anymore. You hear of it. You see people who claim they can do these things. And you have had people in time past in humanity's history after the cross claiming that they can do these things and doing these things, but these things were not like what Jesus did. And there have been many, many people who have examined these things and found those things to be false, find those things not to be medically true, and find these things not to even be religiously and spiritually true, that these things occurred again, they came back again in people, on and on and on and on and on. Okay, you have that debate today. The religious community and religious world debates that even today. So this is nothing new. My comments is not nothing new. It's one thing we do know for a fact that in the Bible, Jesus healed people of all kinds of diseases and infirmities. And when Jesus talked to the demonic world, they responded to Jesus. There were cases we have read already and studied already where the demonic world said, "You are here before our time." There are cases where you have found out that when the room was cleaned out by Jesus, if you didn't put God in it, they came back, and they came back with more friends, more demons. Okay? So we know that in faith to be true. Okay? So we know that post that the apostles had the ability to do that. We know that when a snake bit Paul, he didn't die. You know, we know that poison was drink and they didn't die. We know that they commanded spirits to do that, to come out of people. You know, we understand that because we're Bible students and we read the Bible. The point that they're making here in the story is this father said something's wrong. They came down for his disciples to do it, but they came to see Jesus. It didn't happen. Now, Jesus is put on the spot when he get there, because Jesus is not on the spot, but he is put on the spot because the Father says specifically to him, you're the reason why I came here. And Jesus is going through the same routine that he has always gone through. You know, your faith has healed you. Go away. Your faith has healed you. Or because of your faith, this and that. So Jesus is acting like Jesus always acts. And I'm saying all the time that when people tell you you're healed, I always tell you that it's something about your faith that has something to do with why you're not healed. Jesus can do these things, and he did these things. The Father just recognized that at this particular time, right now, the way things are going on right now, nothing happened, and I'm down and out. So when Jesus healed his son, that lifted his spirits back up, because actually that's who he came to see in the first place. Now, Jesus did rebuke the disciples because of that. And that's just something you and I personally got to look at as we study this, to see what happened, what's going on, why couldn't they do that? And Jesus made it perfectly clear why not. So are you saying, Brother Stanley, that they needed to spend more time in prayer and more time in fasting? Well, that's what Jesus said. And what does that do for you? That lifts up your spirits and your faith. Now, do you spend a lot of time in fasting? Do you spend a lot of time in prayer? Or you just haphazardly go on when things happen, you just said, okay, it happens? Or are you really concerned about your situation and the things that's going on around you? And you know, the more you pray, the more you communicate with God, the more you go one-on-one with God, these things, these mountains around you seem to move out of the way. You know that. But there are days, there are times in your life, there is a season in your life where you can need somebody else to pray for you because you just got knocked off your feet. Okay? So that's what I want to say. That's how I want to put it, because that's the way the situation is right now. These are ordinary people. It's very hard. I know when we study these things, we get so captivated with the knowledge that we do have, and we always forget that they are the history writers. They don't have what we have. They're writing that story. The Holy Spirit is using these incidents for the material that you and I have in front of us. They're ordinary people acting ordinary to situations that are extraordinary in their lives and always have been. His story is not like the next person's story on the street. Matter of fact, he's shunned. People are tired of hearing him and seeing him with this boy. People don't want to be around him. He probably has done everything he possibly could have done. He's probably in a community that some may be feeling sorry for him and some not. So he did come to the source. And when it didn't happen, the disciples needed to get tongue lashed because it didn't happen and they made Jesus look bad. It's better not to say anything at all than to say something and it don't work. So if your faith is not right, be quiet. That's all. And say, you got to wait till Jesus get here. It was better to say that and just say to the person, because the person is going to say, well, why can't you do it? This kind of blessing needs to be handled by the master. That's what I would have said. If my faith was right there at that particular moment on that level, that's what I would say, because I'm not going to make myself or Jesus look bad. I don't know why they didn't say that. I don't know if they did say that. But the story opens up where the scribes are yelling and screaming, and I'm sure the disciples are in the crowd is saying something back. And it didn't happen. The fact of the matter is, readers, It didn't happen. And Jesus came down off that mountain at the nick of time. And something did happen. And then the vibe of the crowd changed. It went back to Christ again. So think about it. Think about it. And think about how people view things and how people see things and how they see how this question is being asked. Or did he mean he, Jesus, was specially willing to heal people who have faith in him? Jesus did anything that anybody, up into this chapter 69, we've seen Jesus did everything and anything that anybody asked him to do. When Jesus left, whatever the condition they came in, they were fine when he left. And it's not a matter of Jesus nitpicking and choosing who he was going to do this or that. Whoever came to him, he took care of their problem and their need. He had the compassion to do that. And this is a very, very serious situation right now. And honestly, like I said, I don't know if in my hearing you have been part of this, you have had a child, you have had a situation, or even half of your lifetime dealing with this kind of emotional behavior. I pray for you, and you have my prayers every day. If you're living with someone, we thank God for our medical community and the medicines and the medications that we have right now to help us with these kinds of things when it's on the medical side. Okay, when it's on the medical side. But on the medical side, people try to harm themselves, where people have to be in padded rooms, people have to be strapped down because they're harming themselves. So again, whatever your perspective is, whether it's personal and you're experiencing it right now, God is good, and that these things come from sin. This is not, you're not in this by yourself. This comes from sin. This is not something that God created. This is not something that God started from the beginning. Our lives, our minds, our bodies were perfect, and Adam and Eve messed that up. And because of that, the result of that is these kinds of behaviors, whether they're emotional or physical, are going to attack humanity. It is. And the very fact that we're on a global pandemic right now, when so many people are losing their lives, that wasn't what God had in mind. But we live under a fallen world, and a fallen world brought in sin. And this and the things that we're going through, the things that we were reading as we study on Wednesday night, is because of a fallen, rebellious attitude that God's best friends had to the information that he warned them would happen. And they didn't understand that a whole lot more was going to happen off that information. Okay? All right. Question number 2, and the final question. When Jesus said to his apostles, "Nothing will be impossible for you," Matthew 17:20, did he mean that every person can do anything no matter how great, as long as he believes he can? Or did Jesus mean that the apostles could do anything that they had enough faith to do? What do you think? Let's read it again. When Jesus said to the apostles, "Nothing will be impossible for you," Matthew 17:20, did he mean that every person can do anything, no matter how great, as long as he believes he can? Or did Jesus mean that the apostles can do anything that they had enough faith to do? What do you think? Sister Kathy answered question number 1. If you would like to add more to question number 2, but section number 1. And to the last point, the last question, or did Jesus mean that the apostles can do anything that they had enough faith to do? You're going to have to fast forward a little bit to get to that. So let's see what your answer is going to be. But right now, apparently, the answer is no. Okay. Okay, Sister Karen.
Yes, I believe it means that the apostles can do anything that they want to do, and the reason why, because Jesus was with them and Jesus taught them, and they are the stewards. I mean, basically, they're going out to teach the whole world. That was their responsibility. So because of that, they had to be equipped to do what Jesus did, to change the mind of people and to get people to believe. I think that's like a tricky question, because we do have the verse that says, I can do anything through Christ who strengthens me. That's not saying the same thing. That's talking about our faith. I'm not able to heal anyone because we do not have that dispensation anymore. And also I was not an apostle. So basically, I do not have that ability as the apostles. So I think it's different. And the apostles can do anything. And we regular people can do anything through faith within reason.
Okay. All right. All right. Just to throw a little bit of Greek in here, just so you can understand what they're going through at the time of this incident and later on the writing. The Greek word for foam at the mouth, the Greek word itself is aphrizo, aphrizo. It denotes the foam at the mouth and was considered a confirmation of demonic possession. Okay. You unbelieving generation. Jesus was talking to his disciples. All right. And he had just gave them the power to do what? I say, if you guys can remember when Jesus gave his disciples the power, he gave them the power to do what? To cast out what? Remember, to cast out demons and perform healings. Remember Matthew 10:1? But here they failed. Okay, that's what I'm saying. If you slow the story down, he's coming back down. He's coming back down off a powerful moment. Okay, of the transfiguration. He's coming down and his disciples are being jumped on. He gave them the power to do that. Now, to the point that Sister Karen is making, we can do all things through Christ who strengthened us. And whatever power that God has, that he gives from his throne room through his son, we have. Okay? It still looks bad if we are not positive, if we are not faithful, if we are not believing in things. It still looks bad when we have a lack of faith, knowing that God has gave us the power through our lives and what he has done for us in our lives to be a great advertisement for him. Now, if Jesus, and no ifs, ands, or but about it, gave them the power to do that, what happened today? What happened at that moment right there? And why was he frustrated? He was frustrated because they didn't get the job done. Again, I open up with saying that this is one story in time where Jesus is more human-like than godly. And I'm not minimizing his deity, but he reacts with frustration here. He does. And they understand that. They understand that. And again, in, I think it's in Luke, after he says this, he says in Luke 44, let these words sink into your ears, for the Son of Man is going to be delivered unto the hands of men. After that incident, he said, let these words sink into your ears, for the Son of Man is going to be delivered unto the hands of men. But they did not understand the statement, and it was concealed from them, so that they did not might perceive it, that they were afraid to ask him about the statement. Okay, let this be clear. That's what Jesus said. Let this be clear. I'm not going to always be here. So y'all going to have to get on your A game. This can't happen again. That's what Jesus is saying. I'm going to be delivered up. And we already know, fast forwarding what happened. But this is a crucial time in Jesus' ministry, and it's a very frustrating time in Jesus' ministry. For him to come back down, and here we are. You guys are getting chewed up. When I gave you the power of the Holy Spirit, this should not have happened. The same thing with us in church. This should not happen. It shouldn't be a falling away. Brothers and sisters shouldn't be going back to a life of sin. This shouldn't happen. Y'all should have your act together by now, because we went down this road before. So it's packed. This is a very, very powerful moment right here with Christ and the way Christ is reacting. And they still didn't get it. We know that they don't get things. We know that. We have seen that time and time again. But let this be clear. I'm going to be crucified. I'm not going to be around. So y'all got to step it up. Brother Stanley. Oh, I'm sorry. Sister Nadine.
Right. So I find it very interesting that he says this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. So here were the 9 who were left behind down there, and they were trying to get this spirit out of this boy, and they couldn't do it, even though they had been given in chapter 10, they had been given authority over the evil spirit. But Jesus said, however, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. And we know that the apostles were not fasting. The disciples weren't fasting because earlier studies, we had the Pharisees and scribes coming to Jesus and said, why aren't your guys fasting? And he says, why, they're not fasting basically because I'm here with them. When I'm gone, they will. So this is an interesting study for me, because if Jesus is saying this kind doesn't go out except by prayer and fasting, and we know that the apostles weren't fasting, then basically it seemed like they could never have gotten it out if you go with that logic. But so I agree with Brother Stanley Jr., who was saying this is more than just a simple idea of belief. This is a deeper thing than having faith or having belief that they could do it. I think they maybe need to have a deeper belief and understanding of who God was. Remember, this 9 wasn't up there on the Mount of Transfiguration. The 9 that was left behind when didn't see this transfiguration. They did know who Jesus was. They knew who God was because of Peter's earlier confession. But I don't think that they were able to do this because of what Jesus says here. So I think when Jesus was telling them off because of their lack of faith, it was a stronger faith he was talking about. It couldn't just be belief in him. It had to be something else.
It's unfortunate that we are afraid. We are afraid to touch this subject in the power that it's bringing to our front door right here on the pages, because we are afraid to say that we are like them in our current situations. Okay? Think about that. Mountains were symbolic of kings and kingdoms, as indicated in the book of Revelation, that has many references to mountains being kingdoms. In this case, Jesus spoke of the power that was available to his disciples to move demonic kingdoms, mountains. But telling a mountain to move was also a proverbial statement for accomplishing a difficult task. They were not there. They did not fast. They did not pray. Teach us how to pray. Isn't that a confirmation of them not praying? And Jesus goes into the model prayer. So they struggled in this area. Okay, now I'm going to get back to my point that I made earlier about the church. The church has and will go through some difficult times. What about those times when we are lack in faith and we have the power to do something about it, but it takes deep meditation and prayer to unlock those situations and seasons that we're in? We're not trained that way to think that way, and we don't think that we have the power to do that, to move those mountains in our lives. That becomes a weaker vessel. That makes God look bad in front of the demonic world, because the demonic world know that in the name of Jesus, you can accomplish anything. It has nothing to do with the spiritual gifts. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Corinthians. I'm talking about everyday spirit lives, spirit given to people like you and me who are ordinary people after in the waters of baptism that have the power to keep Satan off our back and don't use it. Think about that. These are the mountains that's popped up in our lives. Each one of us have a story to tell. Each person in the sound of my voice has a story to tell. But at times, we do have unbelief, and you got to say amen to that. And it's based on how big that problem is and our prayer life. When we lack in prayer, we lack in power. And when we lack in power, we are defeated. And that's a fact, y'all. You know that I'm telling you the truth. Go weeks and weeks and weeks without praying. You will find yourself doing all kinds of things, saying all kinds of things, believing all kinds of things, and being in the midst of all kinds of things because you're not tuned into the source. And that means you're spiritually weak, you're emotionally weak, you're physically weak. You know that. And if you haven't figured that out by now, you need to go back to the cross and get some reconstruction. And Jesus is saying the same thing he's saying here in his frustration to you and I today with the church. We are so fearful of everything around us because we're too busy with everything around us. We are afraid to stick out and be different spiritually. And those of us who do, we get ostracized because we are connecting in with this power of prayer. It leads us right back to prayer. Jesus spent a lot of time praying. Why? Staying connected with God, keeping all the other stuff outside on the perimeter where it did not affect his yeses and yes and his no's and no's. And that is a problem that you and I have. That's why we're sick. That's why we're fearful. That's why our finances are the way they are. That's why we're always edgy. That's why we have no get up and go about us spiritually. That's why we so ho-hum. Because when you pray and stay connected with God, God don't function that way. God doesn't respond that way in prayer because that's against his divine nature. God is never defeated about anything. So that's what he's saying here. That's what Jesus is saying here. And I understand exactly what he's saying. I understand exactly what he's saying based on my life. When I'm on my A game, nothing bothers me. Nothing. When I get deflated, everything seems to be a problem. See? And he did give them the power to do it. It's 9 of y'all. I only took 3 with me. It's 9 of y'all. And 1 of y'all couldn't figure this out. I paired you up. And now I'm looking bad. I'm looking bad. Bring the boy to me. Look at the way Jesus said that. Bring the boy to me. And then the demonic world have more faith than the disciples did. And everybody else around. He took the boy and he slammed the boy on the ground because he knew what was getting ready to happen to him. So think about it. Just think about it. Just think about the way the whole story is and think about what Jesus has said previously. Think about what he had given them. Think about the demonic world knowing that. Remember, Satan said what? What Jesus said to Peter? That Satan has demanded you, that he can what? Shift you as wheat, that he can refine the particles of who you are to barely nothing. You know how that you throw everything in that little basket, that little net, and you just shake it out. Do all the stuff fall out? No, just the fine particles to barely nothing. That's what he's saying. So the demons know who they are. What happened to the sons of Sceva? Jesus, I know. Paul, I know. But you gotta be kidding me. See? And sometimes that happens to us in our everyday life. Oh, I know what you used to be like. Oh, I used to hear those prayers. Yeah, you was on your, but you ain't on your A game now. So I'm going to hit you with everything. And God is saying what? You got to be kidding me. That's what I'm saying. When we do good things and we are doing the right things, God don't pat us on the back for that. We are imitating his son. We don't get a pat on the back for that. That's our righteous duty to act like God. God is saying, what took you so long? It's about time. That's what God's saying. Now let's get something done. That's what God is saying. What took you so long to get back here? And then we make up excuses about our behavior. And then we have support, because we get support from weak-minded people who are just like us. But this is a beautiful, beautiful portion of history right here that I told you was going to see a side of Jesus that imitates his frustration level, because he did give them the tools to be successful. It's like a person graduating with a degree and do nothing for it. All that money, all that studying, all that time. And it's like they never went to school to get an advanced degree. And everything about them shows. And when they were standing there getting that advanced degree, on it says the rights and privileges. Not everybody's going to get to this level. Christianity is the same way. Not everybody is going to get it through fasting and prayer. A lot of people today still struggle with fasting. A lot of people today still struggle with prayer. It's a lot of Christians who won't pray every day. There's a lot of Christians who don't pray in the morning, a lot of Christians who don't pray in the midday, and a lot of Christians who don't pray at night. And they are weak. They are weak. And on top of being weak, they are powerless, because they don't have the connection with God. Okay? So there we are. That's the story. In time. And next week, we'll be talking about Jesus foretold his death again and the temple tax. He's going to allude into this every chance he gets, because the week is coming. And he just wants people to know it's time to exit. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke did a very good job this evening to break this down for us, to help us to see how important this was and how important it was to the main characters, or the main character of this section, and that was the Father. The Father came to Jesus with a problem, just like so many people have done. And Jesus wasn't around, and his disciples couldn't do it. And, just be honest. Just be honest. Brother Ricardo, I don't see him on tonight, but I want to share a word with you that he said with one of our sisters, when one of our sisters called him to pray. And this is before he got baptized. He said to the sister, he said, I think you need to call one of the brothers in the church, because I am not there yet. And when you talk to him, ask him what he meant by that, he'd be more than happy to share that with you. There are times in your life when Satan comes around and he brings his tools and he bring you into his environment with his people, and he knows that you're not acting holy. Say, I'm not there yet. It's better. It's much better. Because see, now he's going to expose you if you say you are something that you're not acting like. So just say, I'm not there yet. I'm in the reconstruction period of my life right now. It's easier and it's best to say that, because those are powerful words, because that let the person know, or the people know, that you are under construction and you're trying to get better. You're getting built up, because that's what construction means. It means building up. But don't act like you're something that you're not when you're around people who are acting normally in sin, because that's going to make God look bad. Okay. All right. I hope this was a good study for you tonight. And I hope this was a good section for you. And I hope that, it was an eye opener where you can go back and just say, that's right. I can understand, he did give them the power to do X, Y, and Z, and they didn't do it. So they needed to get what they got. And the man did get what he came for, because that's Jesus. And his son was healed. And this wouldn't happen again. So that was a beautiful story. When they got back home, I know the family rejoiced. They probably, found a fattened calf and offered it up and praised the Lord and had a big meal. And the whole community, the whole neighborhood danced and had a good time because that son that was being destroyed was now build up. And it's just a beautiful way, the way Jesus do things with people and send people back home where God is edified and praised. And it's just a beautiful thing. I just wish, I wish that today we had the power to do these things, because Lord knows if I had that gift, there won't be a nursing home, hospital, or emergency room on the planet. I mean, that's all my ministry will be. You preach, I heal. You know what I'm saying? Let's just get this over with. There will be no virus. I'll go to China. I'll wipe that stuff out and hit every country after that. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, these things are going to occur until Jesus come back on every level, in any level. But thanks be to God, because of Jesus and the cross, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Okay, that's our lesson for the evening. Thank you so much. Love you dearly. I pray all is still well in the pandemic world that we're living in. And I hope that you're able to keep your emotions